Hi, for my speech, I will be discussing Cuba, and my name is Savannah Pettigrew. For this speech, I'm going to be using an interdisciplinary focus of geography and globalization. The country I am choosing to focus on again is Cuba. Cuba is an interesting country because it was one of the last countries to abolish slavery in 1886. Cuba had the largest importation of slaves to ever enter. Around 90,000 African slaves were brought to Cuba. Many of the slaves lived in barracoons that only had one entrance. Another interesting aspect is that sugar was a very important aspect to Cuba in the 19th century. Cuba is geographically located between the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the Atlantic Ocean. Cuba is also the largest Caribbean island in population and in size. Cuba has many mountain ranges, some which includes the Sierra Maestra and the Pico Torquino, the highest point in Cuba. The Pico Torquino is one of the places like a mountain range, which it is a mountain range that you can go and climb and hike with your family and your friends. Other mountain ranges include the Sierra Cristal and Sierra del Rosario. In addition to that, the largest river in Cuba is Cueto. Moreover, the demographic breakdown in Cuba is 64.1% white, 9.3% black, and 26.6% mixed. Let's talk about the tourism in Cuba. The tourism in Cuba is very popular. Havana is the capital of Cuba, which receives 1.2 million tourists yearly. With Cuba alone, it receives 2 million tourists a year. Many of the places of interest include the Rosati Valley Museum, Vinales Valley, and the Cayo Los Brujas, which is a beach that has fishing as well as snorkeling. And the last place of interest is Museum of Revolution, which is a museum with historical exhibits. Now let's get into the restaurants of Cuba. Many of the restaurants include the La Guardia Havana, which is an upscale restaurant that has top floor eating. And you also have El Cocinero Havana. It's a loft-like dining room with a rooftop terrace set. On Google, they say those are the best restaurants you should go to in Cuba. So if anybody wants to go to Cuba, I recommend those restaurants per Google. Now let's talk about the U.S. relationship between Cuba and the United States. Cuba and the U.S. are in a number of the same international organizations. The U.S. relationship with Cuba includes a stable, prosperous, and country for the urban people. Cuba and the U.S. also share a commonality, which is slavery. And that concludes my speech.